Branding is so much more than just colors, fonts, or logos. The proper branding can set you apart or can actually bury you in a seed of saturation. This episode will help you uncover how you can stand out as a musician entrepreneur and what are the key principles that will allow you to show up from a place of authenticity, of service, and truly set yourself apart. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Musicians Creating Prosperity podcast. I'm Dr. Fabiana Claure and excited to dive into today's episode. We're talking about branding, we're talking about storytelling, and why, as musician entrepreneurs, understanding that the context for your talent matters, the background information of where all of your skills and gifts and solutions and ideas come from is the foundation for a successful brand. What does this mean? When people come to you, when people are trying to understand what you are about, what you do, what benefits can you provide for them, more than just focusing on the skills that you bring and the things you can actually help them do immediately, like transactionally, if you will, what people need to know is your background information, your story, the context, and where were the series of events that led to your realization, to your epiphanies, to your breakthroughs that now propel you in building the programs and the offers and the services that you're providing. And when you understand that what matters more than anything is your ability to communicate in a very clear and effective way, where does your interest come from? What is the greater why behind what you're building and why you are sharing your skills and talents, and how to communicate that in a way that connects with your ideal clients? Then those skills are as valuable as being a good performer, a good educator, whatever you do as a musician or creative. And so I think for the longest time, musicians have focused primarily on just developing your skills in your main, part of what you do. As a teacher, as an educator, as a professional musician, as a gigging artist, whatever that looks like, composer. And yet the topic of actual branding and messaging and storytelling hasn't really been discussed enough in our industry. So I hope that this episode is going to give you some specific tools, but also not just the tools, but the mindset that you need to adopt in order to stand in your authority and attract dream clients into your business. That's what I want to share with you today. So I want you to think about in your own journey, when you've thought about setting yourself apart, perhaps you've told yourself that there's too many opportunities already there, that people are already being, like they're doing what you want to do, that there's a saturation in the marketplace, if you will. Perhaps you've told yourself that there's too much opportunity, there's too much going on, and why would you be able to add anything different? What would set you apart? Perhaps you've been torn with this notion of trying to figure out what exactly is different between what you do and what everyone else is doing, and how on earth would you be able to set yourself apart? Well, I'm here to tell you that all those questions are valid, but at the same time, they're the wrong questions. Why? Because when you are focusing on creating a brand with a concern around what would people think about you, how would people react to you, uh, whether or not you would be, getting the right responses, then inadvertently you're making the process of building your brand, building your story, building your offers about you instead of your audience. What does this mean? You see, rather than letting these concerns or doubts or insecurities around what the world will think about your brand, about the way you communicate, the way you put yourself out there, if instead you focus on how is this program valid for my clients? Why is this program necessary? Why are my services? Why is my brand imperative? Why does it need to come into the world now so that my potential clients have a solution for their problems? When you can start shifting the questions and changing the nature of your questions to how can I make relevant content that will speak directly to the people that I know I'm here to serve, that will allow them to identify themselves with my mission, my values, my belief systems, and to want to spring into action through my methodologies, through my offers? Now you're starting to ask yourself better quality questions, because now you're not worried about what people are going to think, or moreover, you're not worried about being rejected, right? Because ultimately, rejection is nothing other than information. Rejection is just the context. Rejection is just data, right? How can you create content and put your brand out there, even with the possibility of not appealing to everyone? Yes, there will be some people that will resonate with it, and there will be others who don't, and that's okay. Why? Because when you don't get the results that you want, when you experience initial setbacks or rejection, that's just data that helps you course correct and redirect your strategies and optimize your messaging and your marketing and your branding. So, number one, being okay with the potential of rejection and not seeing it as something bad, but instead approaching rejection as nothing other than data and information is very important part of the mindset foundation for these business principles. Because if you are not clear around how to approach these decisions, and you let fear or concern for other people's opinions overwhelm you, then you're not going to be able to move forward and take the necessary steps, many of which are uncomfortable when it comes to standing in your authority, positioning yourself in this way, right? So I want to focus your attention on the right questions to ask, and stop asking yourself things that are only going to continue limiting your belief system. So when it comes to building your story, and thinking about, okay, why is my story relevant? Well, simply because your brand is going to provide the baseline information and context for your messaging, your strategies, your offers. But a big part of that branding process is, how do you talk about what brought you here, right? People need to know, why are you doing this? Where did this idea come from? Why could you could be doing so many other things? Why are you doing this right now? Well, the reason for that is because of your story. However, when you create your story, when you talk about the context for what you're doing now, number one step is to recognize that your story does not have to be an autobiography. It does not have to be something where you're just focusing inward and sharing, I grew up here, I did this, and then this happened, and then that happened. No, 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 no. The number one misconception is that your story is about you. You know who it is about? It's about your ideal clients. You want to portray your story and communicate it in a way that allows your ideal clients to see themselves in your journey, to identify with what you've had to go through, and to connect with you on a deeper level because you get them. So, number one strategy as you think about kind of positioning your brand, building your baseline foundation content, is that your story is not about you. Your story is about the clients, that your journey, the clients' journey, and how they're going through what they're going through in their life, and how that coincides with what you've gone through. And by the way, if you didn't exactly, have a parallel situation from your clients, right? Maybe one of your students did, maybe one of your clients did. So either way, whether it's directly through your story or through someone else's journey that you followed and guided and were able to help overcome those challenges, either way, the same principle applies. The goal is to find a common point of connection that allows the people in your audience to see themselves in you, in your shoes, and in your journey. Okay. So that's step number one. The second step is, when you're creating your story and putting together the different pieces of your life that brought you to this moment, and giving you the impetus for working in this new way, positioning yourself in an online way, etc. What matters more than just, starting it in a point that resonates with where they are, what matters is, how do you also highlight the benefits for them? Meaning, ultimately, how do you, all these experiences and things you're talking about in your story, how do these help your clients achieve something, solve a problem, fix something that they need to solve? Because if you just talk about the journey that you went through and the obstacles you had to overcome, but you don't translate that into what does that actually mean for your ideal clients, how can they benefit from what happened to you, then even though you know how they can benefit, your job is to imply and to communicate that in your story in a very clear and concise way. Why? Because when they're reading your story, they're reading your background, your About Me page, they want to know what's in it for them. And it's not because they're selfish or self centered, or they don't care about anything. It's simply because, in order for them to put their attention on listening and reading about you, there needs to be something that draws them, right? It's just a magnetic, energetic necessity. Our potential clients are all bombarded with things for their attention, from distracting means on YouTube to like whatever other information, advertising, politics, you know, diet companies, medical companies, like every area of their life, they're being bombarded with attention grabbers. They're wanting their attention. So the way you're going to disrupt and stand out is by connecting not only with what are those common points of connection with your ideal clients, but also, how does your story, how did the things that happened to you give them a solution that they couldn't get otherwise, right? So once again, recapping, step number one is making sure that you create your background story, uh, really focusing on their perspective and what are the struggles and the things that you had to overcome, but starting at a point where they can relate to, right? Versus an autobiography. And then once again, why is it important? Why do stories matter? Because the way our brains are wired, like we're designed to learn through storytelling. Think about it. Before books were written, before printed paper existed, The way information was passed on generations after generations was through storytelling. So our brains are really, really programmed to learn and to feel and to have breakthroughs through storytelling. As the saying goes, facts tell, but stories sell, right? So if you're serious about building a brand that is compelling, that is magnetic, your number one job is to become a great storyteller. So, number one, your story is not about you. It's not about you. It's about them. Number two, you need to be able to describe ultimately how did all these experiences benefit them? What's in it for them? And number three, your story needs to address a specific pain point that you have to be able to highlight is holding them back to their solution. Meaning, we talk about pain points, about pleasure points, right? Where you're wanting to build that gap, if you will, between where your ideal clients are and where they need to be to get to the next stage in their life, whether it's in their musical development, whatever it is they're doing. But most importantly, the way you need to talk about their problem is by highlighting what are they actually doing wrong? What are they actually mistaken in the process of creating their solution? Because when you can highlight the misconceptions in their approach to fixing their problems, then immediately you give them an epiphany, a new discovery, something that builds trust for them. And they say, wow, you understand my problem better than I did. I wasn't expecting this information. And now, like, I need to work with you because obviously you have a very good handle of the solution, right? I mean, we see this happen all the time in the work we do with our musician clients who come to us, many of whom are just like, I want more of what I'm doing. I'm teaching 40 hours a week. If I can only add more students to my plate, and I'm just working with 30 students, but if I can work with 50 students, then I will reach my goals. And they're inadvertently aiming at the wrong target. They just want more of the same, more one-on-one students without realizing that they're going to continue giving their time away. And that's only going to get them to a further place of stagnation and limited income potential. And yes, temporarily, it may give them an illusion of growth and more financial opportunities, but over the long term, they will reach a ceiling and they will feel like, now what do I do? I'm burned out and I'm miserable. I hate my business. I don't know where to do next. I have a waiting list of students. I cannot keep accepting them. I have no way of serving all these clients. Or I'm a gigging musician, a performer, and I'm only relying on income from my performances. And I'm performing 5, 10 gigs a month. But in order to create more income, I need to perform 20 gigs a month. And so many musicians come to us and speak to me and my team with this illusion that they need more of the same. They're trying to work hard at what's not working, right? So they hit a ceiling, they hit a brick wall, frustrated because they're just aiming at the wrong goal altogether. And so a big part of how we kind of help educate, the perception of what the actual problem is, it's not that they don't have enough students, it's not that they don't know how to market themselves, it's not that they don't have enough gigs, is that they're just trying to build a model that is relying on their time, and they're limiting their income opportunities to places where they have to do manual labor. They have to physically show up at a certain place at a certain time, and that's going to always limit their growth potential. So the goal is not more students. The goal is re-engineering what you're doing, redesigning your offer, and learning how to monetize your knowledge instead of trading your time, for example, right? And that's a big reframe. And it takes musicians sometimes weeks or months, sometimes years to wrap their heads around because it's such a different shift from where they were coming from. But the truth is, when we share this message, whether people end up becoming part of our paid programs and working with us in the full capacity to implement these changes, or they come in into one of our free workshops or are listening to these podcasts, free information, it's going to change their lives no matter what. Why? Because there's a breakthrough, there's an epiphany. You know what I mean? It was a shift in what they thought was normal into a new opportunity, a new possibility. And so your goal when you develop your messaging and your story is to have something like that will provide a breakthrough for your ideal clients, something that will help them shift their set of beliefs and realize, wow, I didn't see this before. I now see that I'm actually wrong, aiming at the wrong thing. And there's a better way to fix my problems. And when you can give that breakthrough to your clients, whether you end up working with them or not, they will thank you for the rest of their lives. Why? Because you gave them that epiphany, that shift. So this is step one. There's a lot more to talk about when it comes to branding and storytelling and positioning. But for today, I want to kind of recap what we discussed, the importance of the right branding system, the right frame of mind, why you want to focus on building your brand, focusing on who your clients are and what they need, and not letting your inner critic, your inner concerns, your worries about rejection or what other people think, criticism, all those things, not become egoic in the process of building a brand, but instead opening yourself up. Yes, embracing vulnerability, absolutely, but also with a strategy, right? And so hopefully after this podcast episode, you now feel that you have actionable steps to be able to start redesigning your brand, having a better stance at sharing your story. And if you want to check out how I have put together my story, and just go to fabianaclara.com/about, and you'll be able to read how I kind of explained my journey, my story. Feel free to check that out. And there's other examples as well on kind of how I've shared my journey, etc. So I'll link those in the notes of this podcast episode, because I think it would be helpful for you to just see some examples of how I've done this in many different ways. But at the end of the day, I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. See how this impacted you. I'd love for you to share with me what you've put together. Feel free to reach out, connect with me and my team. Happy to help you have an initial evaluation of what does your brand look like. How could you reposition what you're doing? And obviously, apply the strategies that you're learning in this episode into your specific customized plan. So definitely reach out if you're interested in seeing how you could develop your brand in a more strategic way. And I look forward to hearing from you. Absolutely. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. And until next time, let's prosper together.